Hi, and welcome to episode 24 of the Give Me a Crown Knitting, Spinning and Bits and Pieces podcast. There hasn't been any spinning for a few weeks, but I'm sure I'll get back to that soon, but there is some knitting. And today is Monday the 25th of January 2016, and my name's Nina, also known as Give Me a Crown across the internet. Last week's episode was a bit of a short one, and I think that this week's one will be too, because I have been devoting a lot of time to cardigan knitting, so I'm getting knitting done, but it just doesn't seem like I'm completing much at the moment. So thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoy. So my first item that I want to show you is a finished object, and this is the Pop Fizzle beanie that I started a few weeks ago, and this is a brioche beanie. It was my first time knitting brioche, and the Pop Fizzle beanie is a paid for pattern on Ravelry by Leslie Ann Robinson. So there you can see some of the detail. It has kind of like a florally floral kind of thing going up. Don't know if you can see the crown of it there somewhere. And I haven't washed it and blocked it yet, so I think it will become a little bit more slouchy once I do that. At the moment it's a little bit firm, but it's very warm, very nice and squishy, and exactly what I would need if I was going somewhere nice and cold, which it definitely has not been in Sydney recently. It's been hot and humid, but I wanted to show you my wonderful hat. So it can be worn that way, or it can be worn inside out. So this way. So on this side, this sort of mauvey, pale mauvey kind of speckly yarn is from Rosehip Island. It's a fingering weight yarn held double, and then the dark blue or navy blue yarn is from Bendigo Woolen Mills. It's their luxury 10-ply or Aran weight yarn. So they're both wool, and it's wonderful. I'm really impressed with the pattern and with the fact that I managed to do it without completely messing it up. I'm definitely keen to try out another brioche beanie at some point. I think that it makes for an interesting look. It's quite different to the standard beanie that I've gifted to people before, so I might look out for a few other patterns, but otherwise I'd definitely give this one a go. It's not a beginner pattern by any means. I think that it's a good idea to have mastered your knits and purls and decreases in standard knitting before tackling this. And I provided some tips in episode 22 about just my general experience with learning how to brioche knit. So check that out if you're interested in trying brioche, and don't do what I did, which was knit on double pointed needles. I mean, you can, but so I knit this on my Knit Pro cubics, and I think this was my first time actually using them. I had tried to cast on a pair of socks once, and I just wasn't enjoying the rectangular feel. But for this project it seemed to work out okay. I got a little bit of pain in my wrist, and I think that's just down to the fact that I was using very thick yarn on these needles, and just for knitting socks and things I think I will still give these a go, but they're 3.5mm, so it would have to be chunky socks, Aran weight socks, in order to do that. I still, though, like my metal needles. my pointy needles much more than these, but they seem to work fine with this brioche project. I'm still impressed with the florally things going on and all the colour. But I think it's time to take it off because it is warm and muggy. So yeah, I'll take some photos of it once I've given it a wash, and been a little bit slack in updating my Ravelry projects recently, so I need to do a bit of a photo session and grab them. So in case the top of it didn't show up before, that's how the crown decreases go. So it was one of the comments that I'd read about the free Pearl Bee pattern, was that the crown decreases weren't too much fun, so I really like the fact that it's got a nice swirly pattern going on. When I was weaving in my ends, I found it a little bit strange because I was worried that if I weave in an end on one side, is it going to pop up on the other, and I've kind of woven into the stitches, and it doesn't seem to have mattered, but I can see one of my yarn tails is just poking out up here a little bit. I don't know if it'll, just that little one there. But I think once I give it a wash, it'll disappear. Actually, there's another one. So if anyone has any tips on weaving in yarn ends on brioche, do you just duplicate the stitch, or is there some other trick to doing that? I'd love to know. Then on to my works in progress. So as I mentioned, I have been cardigan knitting, and cardigan knitting, and cardigan knitting, and cardigan knitting. And I'm not complaining because I chose to do this project and I knew that it would take a lot of effort. But I have completed pretty much all the purling that I'll need to do, apart from the ribbing on the sleeves. So this is not going to fit in the screen. But I finished the body of my Geisler cardigan, and I'll see if I can hold this up somehow. So it has this long collar that can fold up or be held. It can fold down or it can stand up, and then that's the ribbing on the body. And I was really happy with the instructions because it actually said how many rows of ribbing to do. Some patterns just say how many centimeters or inches to do, and I can get a little bit bind off happy, and I just want to get the project off my needles, and I will finish up with a little bit before I should. So it was good to know exactly how many rows I was meant to be doing, and because I was getting row gauge, I did what I was meant to do, and I'm happy with the length of it, and it looks like it's going to sit nice and neat at the hips. Thankfully, I realised just as I was about to start the ribbing that when I was doing the button band, I decided to increase the width of the button band on both sides by 1 garter stitch. So it looks like that. The reason I was happy to realise it was because I would have otherwise done a whole row of ribbing and realised that my ribbing was off, because it's a 2x2 rib and I technically had 2 less stitches in my rows. So if you do go and adjust your button bands, make sure that whatever happens at the end of your project matches. So all I did was I added 2 extra stitches on the sides of the first row of the ribbing. So that fixed that problem. What else? So this is being knit with Bendigo Woolen Mills luxury yarn, and I haven't woven in my ends yet, but I got just to, that's not going to show up very well, I got just to the ribbing before I had to join in my second ball. So if I hadn't have had this long collar, I think that I probably would have been able to do the whole body with just one 200-gram ball of yarn, so it would have meant no woven in ends, but one isn't too much of a problem. But I do like the size of their yarn balls because 200 grams goes a long way. I'm going to then be starting on my sleeves, so I'll be picking up my stitches, picking up a few from the underarm, and knitting around and around and around and around, and no purling up until the ribbing. But ribbing doesn't seem to take me that long. It's just if I'm doing a very long stretch of purls, that it sort of seems a little bit tedious and my mind can wander, and but purling somehow seems to be almost as fast as just plain knitting. But I digress. So I'm wondering whether or not to knit my sleeves on magic loop or with DPNs. Let's see, if I use double pointed needles, I'm worried that I'm going to change my gauge, and even knitting on magic loop, I'm worried that my gauge might be different. So what I might do, I might actually put a lifeline in, so where my my scrap yarn is at the moment holding my sleeve, I might put a lifeline in there and then start on maybe magic loop, but I'm faster at DPNs. Anyway, I'll have a bit of a think about it, and I'm sure by next week I'll have some part of a sleeve, if not a whole sleeve. Hopefully I'll have a whole sleeve done. Be nice to get this done in a few weeks, which I've been saying ever since I started this project. The other thing that I'd love to know is whether or not you have any recommendations on button colours. So the original pattern has got sort of creamy, yellowy creamy coloured buttons, so I'm wondering whether or not I go with something like that, so it's sort of a naturally colour, or whether I go with white, whether I go with a grey to match the slate colour in the collar, or something completely different. So if you've got any suggestions for me on button colours, I'm going to start to hunt for some of them soon, and it would be nice to be able to plan ahead rather than finish it all and then have a big panic about the fact that I need buttons, because I've had one recommendation about a place in Sydney to go and find some buttons, but yeah, I want to go in with a plan, I think, about which ones to get. So that's it for my knitting. I did have an unexpected acquisition. Before Christmas I showed some socks that I was knitting for my uncle, and I sent those socks off to Finland, and then a few days ago I got a big parcel in the mail, and my uncle, aunt and grandmother had decided to send me some yarn and some finished sweets, so they sent me 4 balls of this Novita Seitsemän veljestä nostalgia. I'm not too sure how you'd pronounce that in Finnish, because when they sort of mangle their English words, it can sometimes be a bit funny. So nostalgia, I don't know, anyway, Seven Brothers nostalgia yarn, that's in the pink one. They also sent me 4 in this blue colour, 2 in a grey colour, and 2 in a purpley colour. So some of these will be sent off to my mum, and then I'll think of something. I've already been having a look at the Novitha site for some ideas. This is an Aran weight yarn, and it's got 75% wool, 25% polyamide. So it's great for thick chunky socks, but considering the quantity of yarn, there could be something a little bit more interesting that could be made out of them. I think if I gave the whole lot to my mum, she would probably be making a blanket, and these are very much the purples and the blues in particular are colours that she loves. So if you've got any ideas for Aran weight socks, I'd love to hear about them. Basically, I'd love to hear about anything. I haven't had a chance to do much research on Ravelry recently for patterns. I was hoping to cast something on new this week, but I decided to put all my effort into getting the cardigan body finished, so I need to start doing some research, find myself a new project that I can cast on, and yeah, but I want to feel more productive. At the moment it just feels like I'm working on the same thing over and over again, but now that I've got my brioche hat done, I think I can start another project, and I've still got 1 pair of socks on the go, so I'll pick those up as well. For my blanket, I've only done one little dark green square down there, so I'll show that off better when I've done a few more. What else? I am a little bit behind in watching podcasts because there's been a lot of tennis on the TV. So while I've been working rather than watching podcasts, I've had the tennis on, but I'm trying to catch up, and I had seen the name Shara pop up. I think I heard in a podcast, and then in my Ravelry, in the Give Me a Crown Ravelry group, and a few other places, and I finally got a chance to check out the What Shara Made podcast. So it's a newish knitting podcast from Melbourne, and I watched the first couple of episodes and the latest one, and they're very enjoyable. I like the way that Shara presents her what she's been making, and it's great to see another person podcasting from Australia. So I need to catch up on the other episodes in between, and I think there's a few other new Australian podcasts out there, so I need to go and poke around and discover those. So with that, I'll finish up, and I hope that you're well. I hope that you're getting lots of time for knitting and spinning, unlike me, and I hope that you're having fun, and I'll see you soon.